Bidding paddles rose lazily around the room as the county tax auction moved through its final lots, mostly scraps nobody wanted, leftover parcels from a highway project that had stalled years earlier. When Lot 14 came up, a rocky 5-acre corner nobody had bothered to even photograph properly, Marcus Webb raised his paddle for $200. A few chuckles rippled through the room. County Commissioner Dale Pruitt, who'd overseen the original seizure of Marcus's family's 150 acres 18 months earlier, smirked from his seat near the front. "Sentimental, Mr. Webb?" he asked. Marcus said nothing, just signed the paperwork and pocketed the deed. Nobody in that room understood yet what those 5 overlooked acres actually meant, but in 8 months, the county would understand completely. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, what state are you watching from tonight? Heavy silence followed Marcus out of the auction hall, the same quiet that had settled over him 18 months earlier when county officials first arrived at his family's farm outside Cedarville with eminent domain paperwork. The state had approved a major highway expansion route that cut directly through 150 acres his grandfather had farmed since the 1950s, and Marcus, despite hiring an attorney and fighting the valuation for months, ultimately received a settlement far below what he believed the land was worth. Construction never actually started. Budget disputes at the state level stalled the highway project indefinitely just 3 months after the seizure, leaving Marcus's former land sitting fenced off and unused. Not farmed, not built on, just empty. A constant reminder of what had been taken for a project that might never happen. Buried in old property records from before Marcus's grandfather even owned the land, county officials had never bothered researching what the small 5-acre parcel, now up for auction, Lot 14, actually contained: the original access easement and water rights tied to the regional aquifer that fed irrigation across 3 neighboring farms, including what remained of Marcus's own smaller adjacent property he'd managed to keep. Marcus had found the old deed reference by accident, digging through county archive records while trying to understand exactly how his family's original land grant had been structured. The 5-acre parcel had been split off decades earlier during a minor property dispute, and somehow, through years of paperwork and reassignments, it had ended up back in county hands during the highway seizure, sold as scrap, valued as scrap, understood by absolutely no one as anything but scrap. Why bother spending money on land that can't even support a garden? His neighbor Ray Holloway asked him outright one afternoon. Marcus just shrugged. "I've got my reasons, Ray. Give it time." Ray didn't press further, though he mentioned to a few others around town that Marcus seemed to be taking the whole seizure situation harder than anyone realized. Weeks passed, and Marcus began clearing brush and repairing an old access road on the 5-acre parcel, work that puzzled anyone who drove past. County road crews, still maintaining equipment near the stalled highway corridor, noticed his activity and reported it up the chain out of simple curiosity more than concern. If you've made it this far, you already sense something's building, and if you want to see exactly what makes the county regret this auction, hit subscribe now, because we're getting close to the moment everything changes. In April, a survey crew from the State Transportation Department showed up unannounced at the edge of Marcus's 5 acres, measuring and photographing the parcel with an intensity that had nothing to do with routine maintenance. Marcus watched from his truck for a while, before finally approaching the crew leader, a woman named Denise Farrow, who seemed surprised to find the land had a private owner at all. According to our records, Denise said, checking a tablet, this parcel should still be county property. Marcus handed her a copy of his auction receipt and deed. Denise's expression shifted as she cross-referenced something on her screen. "This changes things significantly," she murmured, more to herself than to him. The revived highway corridor plan routes directly through this access point for the water main relocation. "We'll need to discuss right-of-way access with you directly." Marcus felt the weight of 18 months settle into something closer to clarity. "I'm listening," he said. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat across a conference table from Commissioner Dale Pruitt and a small team of county attorneys. The same commissioner who'd smirked at him during the auction, now reviewing paperwork with considerably less amusement. The revived highway project, restarted after new state funding came through that spring, required guaranteed access to the aquifer's water main relocation point, a point that ran directly through Marcus's 5 acres, the only legal access route the original engineering plans had ever identified. "Mr. Webb," Pruitt began, his tone noticeably more formal than 8 months earlier, "the county would like to discuss an easement agreement for the water infrastructure work." "I'd be glad to discuss it," Marcus said evenly. "Though I should mention, I've had an independent appraisal done on the parcel's access rights, given its role in the regional water system. The valuation came in considerably higher than $200. One of the attorneys shifted uncomfortably. Pruitt's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We were hoping for a reasonable arrangement, given the county's need to move quickly on this project." "I understand the timeline pressure," Marcus replied. "I'd also point out that when the county seized my family's original 150 acres, reasonable wasn't really part of the conversation. I'm willing to negotiate fair terms. I'm not willing to be rushed into another undervalued settlement." Silence stretched across the conference room. Pruitt looked at his attorneys, who offered no easy way around the situation. Marcus legally owned the only viable access point, and without his cooperation, the entire revived highway project would stall indefinitely. Again, this time with state funding on the line and deadlines the county couldn't afford to miss. "What terms did you have in mind?" Pruitt finally asked, his earlier condescension entirely gone. Negotiations stretched over the following month, and by early summer, Marcus and the county reached an agreement that included fair compensation for the easement, a formal water rights guarantee protecting his adjacent farmland, and, something Marcus hadn't expected to actually get, a supplemental review of his original 150-acre settlement from 18 months earlier. That supplemental review, prompted by the county's sudden willingness to avoid further public scrutiny, resulted in an additional payment correcting some of the undervaluation from the original eminent domain settlement. It wasn't full restitution for everything Marcus felt he'd lost, but it was more than he'd expected to ever see again. Ray Holloway stopped by that summer, genuinely curious now instead of skeptical. "I still don't fully understand how you knew," he admitted. Marcus explained the old deed research, the easement history nobody else had bothered to trace. Ray shook his head slowly. $200, he said. "Damnedest thing I've ever seen." Quiet satisfaction found its way into Marcus's routine over the following months. Though he rarely discussed the negotiation unless someone asked directly, he used part of the settlement to invest back into his remaining farmland, finally able to plan for the future instead of simply absorbing losses from the past. Commissioner Pruitt, for his part, never mentioned the auction again, but county staff, Marcus heard through Ray, had developed a noticeably more thorough review process for any future land seizures, checking easements, water rights, and old deed histories far more carefully than they ever had before. Sometimes, the smallest, most overlooked piece of land is the one that changes everything. Marcus never raised his voice once, and it corrected a wrong nobody thought could be corrected. If stories like this move you, subscribe, because there's more coming every week.